Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have Mark Dixon, CEO of International Workplace Group, to discuss potential carbon savings of hybrid work. We'll also take a look at out-migration from major urban areas in the US and UK. Mark, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Hello, Jill. Thanks for having me.
You got it. A couple of studies I want to talk about here. The first one, the rebirth of the town, suburbs, and countryside. Tell us about some of this research, the methodology behind it, and what were some of the trends that stuck out to you?
No, look, there's a very clear trend that the workplace has moved. It's moved to places that are convenient to where people live. So if they live in the suburbs, if they live in the countryside, it's opening up a whole new world of work, a much more efficient world of work where they don't necessarily want to work from home, but they do want to work somewhere locally. So we're seeing a lot of traffic into our local centers all over the United States. In fact, all over the world. It's a worldwide phenomenon. So the trend is for companies to be changing the way they support their people, and for workers to be working in a different way, going into the office or to a central office, let's say, maybe once, maybe twice a month, and the rest of the time they're working either at home, but a lot of them decide to work from a local workplace. And this is changing the sort of whole geography of cities and countries, and sort of the whole makeup of where people live, work, and where they socialize. So it's quite an important change.
I saw in the study that rural and suburban economic could generate an extra 1.3 billion US in spending per year because of the spreading out of the demographics.
Yeah, well, it's moved the spend. These folks before were going into cities and they were commuting. They're going down the road, so it's sort of regenerating local economies. So it has an important effect on not just the environment, but sort of making smaller towns more vibrant places to work and live. All the workers need to be supported with many things. I mean, if they're going to the city 5 days a week, they buy them in the city. They don't buy them where they live. So very important changes we're seeing in many countries. And, the spend is quite significant. And, it has a knock-on effect on families, a much better effect on families. People just gaining an hour, maybe 2 hours a day, and they're spending that time on things they want to do. And of course, cutting out all the pollution that is caused by unnecessary commuting.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who commutes nearly an hour and 45 minutes each way, I can't tell you how many events have been missed or, trains getting canceled. And of course, there's affordability, not even just affordability as it relates to the commute, but I read in the New York Times this weekend, Jersey City, just across the Hudson from New York City, rents went up 23% year over year. I mean, affordability is a question. It makes a big difference living 45 minutes an hour outside of the city. But I want to talk about the greener future as well. I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, a New York Times interactive map that they had, you could see from March to April, you could see the climate change immediately. I mean, it made a big difference.
Yeah, well, it makes a huge difference to the carbon footprints of companies. Basically, there was a study done that showed that using hybrid working, which is saying you don't need to commute, find a local workplace or work from home some of the time, come into the office when you need to collaborate, maybe a day a week, 2 days a month. This was reducing the sort of carbon footprint and pollution that's coming with that carbon footprint by, in Los Angeles, 87%. Because people spend more time in their cars between places than they do going to the meeting they're going to, and so on. So really dramatic effect. And we're seeing that around the world. I mean, this is happening in Japan. This is happening. We operate in 121 countries, and it's pretty much a universal effect. It's a technology revolution. This is Zoom and Teams and other technologies just allowing people to work in a different way and allowing companies to support their people in a much more, let's say, worker-friendly way, which is sort of not forcing them to commute to awkward and difficult to reach locations. By the way, it's okay if you live 10 minutes down the road from the workplace, but most people don't, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, for someone who does work on a hybrid schedule, it is nice to have the flexibility where you can be in a couple days a week and there is a collaboration. There's certainly something to be said about mentorship and so forth, but having the flexibility and not having to commute, and of course, cost savings, I think it's a big priority for not even just Americans, but to your point, major cities around the world. So do you think this is a trend that will continue, or perhaps this trend will be indefinite, where the hybrid model for those jobs that can work on a hybrid schedule will continue?
Most definitely, most definitely. Look, there's more to it than actually. This isn't anymore something to do with an aftermath of the pandemic.
Right.
This is, everyone tried it then, it worked, and it's there to stay because it has such a beneficial effect on companies' balance sheets. It reduces their cost by 50%. At least. It reduces the carbon footprint, and it's what workers generally want. It's not all workers, but so it's definitely there to stay. You know, we have a long book of new companies joining us and inquiring today and changing the way they work, and they're looking for companies like us. We've got a huge platform to move over to. So, you know, these companies are changing, and that's what's driving it. And there's a lot of new learning that's come in. There's a lot of new techniques on how to manage people that are working in a remote way. And so it's a whole new way of, it's actually quite interesting what companies are doing in terms of getting the most out of people and supporting people in a much more constructive way, wherever they may be. And that's leading to, you know, gains in productivity, and it reduces staff turnover. And these two things, plus the cost savings, are why it's there to stay for most companies. You know, it's just good business, and those trends tend to stay.
Mark, do you think business leaders are under pressure from local officials in city centers like New York, like San Francisco, to bring workers back? Clearly, if that revenue is going elsewhere, you're missing the revenue in the cities. Do you think there's any sort of pressure there, or do local officials need to figure out how to work and generate income in other ways in a hybrid environment?
You know, I think there's a huge job for local officials here. So, and we're seeing cities around the world starting to embrace it, some more than others. If you look at a city like Paris, there's a whole 15-minute city program across the whole city where they're creating lots of local cities all over the place, all throughout Paris, where they're bringing buildings into action to create amenity. They're creating affordable places for people to live so people can afford to live in the city. You talked about the affordability of Jersey City rents, et cetera, et cetera. It's about cities have to reinvent themselves as places not just for a few people with money, but for workers of all kinds. They're brilliant places to work, lots of amenities, great vibe in places like New York City. But if young people can't afford to live there and have to commute for an hour in, an hour out every day, then, you know, you don't have the right ingredients for success. So if city officials do have to focus on this trend and make their cities more attractive places in more than just, you know, good restaurants and amenities and having fun. It's about affordable accommodation. And we can see this around the world where there is affordable accommodation near to the center of cities. Those cities are still very successful and have high occupancy rates. Where they are not, where they can't afford to live, nothing you can do will persuade someone to use up 2 hours of their day every day to come into a workplace when they can do that work 10 minutes away down the road from where they live. And that's the big difference. So it is changing, and we are seeing city officials also focusing on the trend. And it's a very good thing, great for the environment. You're going to see the shape of cities change as they have to compete against, you know, the suburbs and against the countryside.
All right, Mark, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you.